So thank you very much, Mary, for the intro. I hope that you are all still awake. And I want to do a quick survey. So how many of you are part of a big organization in the room? All right. Who works inside the startup? Okay, just 2 to 3 of them. How many women? Yeah, I wish we were more. So tonight I would like to talk to you about a subject which matters a lot to me. So I work at 5by5. I'm a director there, and I'm as well the co-director of Startup, which is a non-for-profit to promote women in tech. So the subject today, building an API strategy, culture, inside a big organization. So there is 3 colors, and each one of the concepts are super important for the presentation. Who is this girl? So I'm not an engineer, but I'm working on API projects for many big organizations, from exec teams, so business people, to technical teams. Inside a big organization, what does it mean to have an API strategy? Most of the time when big corporates come to me, they ask me, well, I want to build my API strategy. But actually, it's all about culture, and we'll see why. How do they end up be willing to build their API strategy? Well, first of all, there is those big platforms. Those guys, they are scared of them, and they understand what they are doing, but they don't know how to do the same thing. They are also scared by those kind of slides. Many consultants, many people come to them and showing them that and say, well, but why don't you transform yourself? And then they talk about API strategy, and even more when you talk about banks and financial services, because you hear about GDPR, but you hear about also as well about PSD2, and this is the first trigger for them to go there. So what comes to your mind when you think about API strategy? Well, quite the classic recipe. First, you define an API and you agree on the API. Okay. Then you have a dedicated team to build this API. You have identified some use cases. You have as well a business model. Then you design a prototype of the API. You do some data testing. You do early release, and then you go live and you go on production and you go live. But that doesn't work this way. I'm pretty sure that the guy who raised their hand and in the big organization, they quite agree with me. What does it mean inside a big organization? And when I say big organization, I say most of the time non-tech organization. First of all, there is no defined APIs. There is a CEO who is like convinced that the platform model is the way to go, but how do I make it happen? There is a lot of politics, you know of that, and all the way from top to down and down to top, everything is about empowerment. So I was very happy about the keynote by the CTO of Fab, because it's mostly about empowerment, about culture. A dedicated team, which means that there is a governance already when you talk about the APIs, but you can't find that already. And mostly when you have like the DevOps team separated from the developer team, separated from the business team. Some use cases identified. It means that you have a kind of you have an approach to your business, like you think about your business as a product, and that's not really much the case into big organization. So most of the time they think about product, but they don't really test it on the market. So use cases not that well identified. Prototype, they might have a lot of POCs, not a prototype, but not the standard in place. And then to test it, Yes, they can. They build some portals, they build some APIs, they launch it, and they hope that the developers will come, but they don't come. They never come. That's why, eventually, talking about API strategy into a big organization is first of all talking about culture. In real life, API strategy is a carnival. It's sometimes exhilarating, but sometimes very tiring and exhausting. But what we do at 5by5 to solve that? How do we help them go further? First of all, we help them from going from 0 to 1. So where to play, because you can't say that you can build APIs for your entire business. You need to do some choice. You need to prioritize some stuff. So where to play, where has the best use cases you need to launch first. Then who are my users? And then we use design to help them build the proto persona and to validate those hypotheses and go to the market and test some prototype. And then what is the value proposition of my business model? How do we do that? A lot of market research, a lot of interviews, internally, externally, a lot of evangelization. I'm pretty sure there is a lot of API evangelists around in the room, maybe, or in the place. Well, I'm not an API evangelist, but you can say that I'm a kind of this kind of person into big organizations, because each day of my work with my clients, I preach APIs to exec people, to excom people, and to tech people who will talk to me about web services, and I'm explaining them what is the philosophy underlying APIs. And then user testing and some trying to evangelize as well to bring them the product mentality, because most of the time what they realize that they are organized as project team, but once you build an API, you have to think about it like as a product that will iterate, that will evolve, and that's not very easy for such organizations. When you talk about culture, you talk also about language. As I was saying, I'm not an engineer. I don't know how to code, but my job is really to translate those two languages, and to build this shared language between the business people and the tech people. So, how does it start? What is it? First of all, I think the first question you have to reassure them about is about data, because when you start talking about open APIs, they think quite easily that they will open all their data to everyone, and most of the time as well, it's tricky. But even people talking about APIs don't really understand what does it mean. So there is a lot of pitch deck, a lot of evangelization, a lot of coffee with people to explain what is an API, a lot of individual meeting, and a lot of mapping of the stakeholders. Then I really like this metaphor because what is super interesting is that you don't know what you don't know, and that's the case when you are a big organization. You have been working this way for years. You have a core business, you have a legacy IT system, and you are building APIs. It's totally new, and those big organizations, they are not designed to do some experimentation at scale. So how do you find the right parameter to experiment some stuff? And that's where I'm not an engineer, but my background is more into design, and I apply product design thinking to go and find some answers to know where to go and how to go there. So it's like maybe you are familiar with Harry Potter. He has a map, and he spreads some liquid, and then the routes and the way to go appears. It's quite the same idea here. We use benchmark, use cases, personas, users interview to then see where to go. And those proto persona are key to every project because they are they are in the mind of the tech team, but as well in the mind of the execs team. Big organization. In the end, after the 0 to 1, they might know where to go, but the very, very tough question then, but it's how do I do that? It's difficult to, they are not a startup, they are not starting from scratch. They have a lot of stuff already going. They need to run their day-to-day business. And they need as well they can't for sure recruit all new developers. So they need to empower and train their people. That's why I like to say that we at 5by5 we create a hybrid team, because I'm pretty sure as well that a team, if you take the team of Stripe, for example, and you put this team inside a big organization, a big bank, it won't work, because they won't know about the politics ongoing there, and for sure the products, the tools and the infrastructure already there won't allow them to make a great job. So it's really you have to be creative to design the good team actually. So how do we act? We act like a shadow team inside the big organization, trying to help them design the team, recruit the talent inside, outside, creating some new tools, and onboarding teams and training. What I really like about our company is that we are able to bring a lot of flexibility to our clients, because we work with the ecosystem as well. So we are 5by5, we are the core team, but we work a lot with entrepreneur in residence. So it's people doing great stuff and working with us on those kind of projects, and a lot of experts. So people already in position at PayPal, at other big tech company who already did that, and we can like help those big organizations do it as well. I love those guys because actually they are. If you ask me, they are the new bankers, kind of. We ended up writing some new job descriptions, and I have an example. So you see API internal evangelists, because most of those big corporations, they need this kind of profile, but at the very beginning they don't know, they don't realize that they need as well some API onboarding people to talk to the business people, but as well to the tech people, and they need API product owner, and those positions, they don't really much exist into those organizations. So I won't go through all this, but it's just to give you a sense of who are we talking to. So it's someone who talking about. It's someone who knows about APIs, and we can like talk about APIs internally, and that's the kind of work we do. And then how do we help those teams go further? It's we use what we call an API business case, because most of the time we realize that they don't have any team because they don't have any products in mind. So we have to build this team with a biz lead, a tech lead, a DX advocate, because its developer experience is quite new for them, and a scrum master, and always an executive sponsor. Then to define the product. What is the name of your product? What is the name of your API? What is your value proposition? Most of the time they don't really know. What is the user? What is your market? What is your roadmap? And I want to put some emphasis on the yellow here, the API study guide. I know Homer is here, so create an API study guide. Okay. Yeah, because they end up building a lot of APIs, but without standards, even internally. So this is a great piece of job to do to avoid any mess and any troubles. Then and this is hard one as well. Most of the time they prefer define their success metrics at the end of the project, which is quite difficult. So helping them define those success metrics far ahead on time, and then build their API documentation and their legal documentation. So thank you very much. And yet, we are hiring, so if there is any developers who want to work with us, not to do API evangelization into big organization, ping me.
And the thing I can say, it works, right? These
Yes,
companies are really changing and improving thanks to this methodology. So I've seen that. Do you have any questions so far? No? Yeah, one question here.
Do you have something like an API maturity model that can help teams doing already APIs to measure their maturity in terms of DevOps, docs, design, etc.?
The metrics...
like on different dimensions of the API job, and saying, okay, do you have personas, do you have go-to-market, do you have a continuous integration, do you have a documentation, do you have a...
Yes, so it's not... where we start with our clients, it's very at the very beginning when it's quite a jungle and we need to see where to go. So the metrics are highly qualitative at first. It's based on business objectives as well. But the further you go, and actually the further you have metrics, quantitative metrics, because we try to measure, but it's not one template of metrics we can use for each use cases, because as you could maybe understand, each APIs we can design, we design it as a product, so all the metrics are based on the objectives of the product on the market or internally as well. I don't know if it answers to your question.
Other question? Yeah. Sorry.
Shadow team. Explain how it works and how it composed from which people.
Shadow team, I think.
Shadow team.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's a very good question. Actually, who do we work with? We work with, so basically normally it's either the CEO or the CIO or the Chief Digital Innovation Officer who calls us. So we work with the team, and we are quite an extension of this team. That's why we are a shadow team, because then what we do is that the more we go into the process, we will then source people internally or outside to replace, and we will onboard them, coach them to replace us and to make the team autonomous.
Can we say you're building superheroes of APIs?
Yes, we are building superheroes. No, but it might be that I'm super happy because when you see developer teams who used to not to talk to the business people, who were like very sometimes sad into their business and at work, and who are feeling empowered, and business people as well who start being super geeky about APIs. I feel like I did a great job, and that's something which makes me wake up every morning.
So thank you very much, Pauline. Thank you. Yeah, it was
Thank
really
you
great
much.
talk.